Hi, I'm Leslie. I'm a third-year law student at Oxford, and I'm here to give you an idea of what to expect at the Oxford interviews. Okay, so this is an example of a case study you might get. You are given 30 minutes to read the case, and then you have to talk about the case during the interview. So, while 30 minutes might seem like a long time, it's actually quite short because the details of the case will actually be much longer than this. Okay, so I'm not sure if you guys can read the text because the font is a bit small, but in this case, a mother promised her daughter to pay her daughter $200 a month if she gave up her job in the US and went to London to study for the bar to qualify as a lawyer. So the daughter was reluctant to do so at first because she had a well-paying job with the embassy in Washington and she was quite happy and settled. But the mother persuaded her that it would be in her best interest to do so. So the mother agreed to pay her a certain sum of money as maintenance while she was studying because she's not going to be getting a salary. And then eventually the mother agreed to purchase a house for the daughter to live in, so she did. And then the daughter rented out the spare rooms and got an income and used that as maintenance. Eventually, after a few years, the daughter got married and she did not complete her studies, which pissed the mother off, and she sought possession of the house. So she sued her daughter, basically. The question for the court was whether there existed a legally binding contract between the mother and the daughter, or whether the agreement was only a family agreement and was not intended to be binding. And, okay, so to begin with, you might be asked open questions like, what do you think about this case? And then you might want to argue for the daughter or the mother, and you don't have to use legal knowledge. You're not expected to have any. It's good to have some, of course, but so for instance, it would be good if you can argue from principle. So in this case, you might be tempted to say that there was no contract because none was drawn up and signed formally, so you think that the mother should win. But in fact, a contract does not have to be a written document and signed by the parties. It could be oral and just as binding on the parties. So that wouldn't be a very good argument. So the temptation to argue from a legal point of view should be avoided because the chances are you will be wrong because unless you know the law very well in this area. Okay, so what can you say then? If you argue from principle, you might for instance say that well, there should be no contract in this case because it was in the context of a family agreement, and if courts were to find binding contracts in all statements made by family members, it would make everyday life very inconvenient because, like, if you promise your family member that you'll visit him tomorrow and you didn't, you might potentially face a lawsuit, right? So you'll make life very inconvenient and invite a lot more potential lawsuits. So regardless of what the law stance on this is, you are saying that in principle, the law should not recognize this as a binding contract in this case. So if you say that, you have to be prepared for follow-up questions such as, okay, so if in this case you say, well, I mean, the mother bought the house, right? And because it was in the context of a family agreement, the daughter is studying for the bar, and the mother just promised to give her a house, but if she decides to take it away after a period of a few years, especially because the daughter terminated her studies, then, well, it seems fair that the mother should be able to get back her house, right? But what if the mother were to terminate immediately after the daughter relocated to London to study for the bar? Wouldn't it seem very unfair to the daughter to have no legal redress whatsoever after she quit her well-paying job and then she made the move to London, which obviously took out a lot of her time and resources? So if you then say that if the daughter were to immediately move to London and the mother were to immediately terminate her maintenance, there should be legal redress for her, then what would the difference be if, in principle, if the mother terminated it after a few years? What's the reason behind it? Is the reason because you feel that the daughter terminated her studies, therefore she's no longer keeping up her end of the bargain, therefore the mother does not have to keep up her end of the bargain? Is that what you think the law should look like. So for example, if you promise someone to sum of money to paint your house, and then the person paints your house but doesn't quite paint it the way you want it to look like, and then you go like, oh, I'm not paying you any money because this is not what I actually really wanted. Yeah. So you have to be prepared for questions like this, and I think an important thing to note as well is that you have to be prepared to refute your own arguments, because you have to be prepared to argue for both sides. As a lawyer, that is one skill that you have to acquire. So if you feel very strongly for one side and you present very convincing arguments, and then this was what happened in my interview. The interviewer just said, okay, so I argued for the mother initially, and then the interviewer said, okay, so imagine you're acting for the daughter right now. How would you argue then? So basically you have to refute all the points that you just gave, which is not always an easy thing to do. Yeah, so you have to be prepared for that. And then there are other questions that the interviewers might ask which might test your ability to think on the spot and your ability to grasp new concepts. So for instance, in this case itself, it was said in the case note that was given. This is not the actual case study that will be given. It will be much longer and in much more detail. But anyway, there was this sentence that says, there is no doubt that the daughter gave consideration for a promise by her mother to provide maintenance. And the interviewer might ask, so consideration in this context has a legal meaning. What do you think it means? Well, if you know what it means, then that's great, but if you don't, then you have to come up with something that makes sense. And then if you're wrong, it's okay, because you're not expected to have any legal knowledge, but the interviewer will teach you on the spot what it means, and then it will be about your ability to grasp new legal concepts quickly. I think that's what the interviewer might be looking out for. Yep, so this is an example of a kind of case you might get and the kind of arguments you have to make. If you'd like more information about things like this, you might want to visit us at www.gurume.co.uk. The link is in the description below. Yep, that's all. Thanks.